This is a partnership with the Atlanta Police Foundation, APD, and the Department of Parks and Recreation, and many of you to identify parks in greatest need, in which we then install security cameras to monitor. All of these cameras are connected to the Video Integration Center, or VIC, which is monitored by APD. We also acquired over 83 acres of parkland to further our goal of providing a park within 10-minute walk of every neighbor, and we continue to work with our partners at the Trust for Public Land, the Conservation Fund, and many others to identify parcels in our community for acquisition. Recreation added 18 new vendors to expand after-school, teen, and senior programming. This is an increase from 14 vendors in fiscal year 23, from fiscal year 23 to 32 vendors in fiscal year 24. We also completed West Cascade Park, which is the first park in NPUQ. And we completed over $2.3 million of investment at Alfred Tupp Homes Golf Course, which will have the ribbon cutting on Friday, May 17th, which is really exciting to be able to celebrate that golf course and the revitalization. If you haven't driven by, please check it out. The team's doing a great job. We also replaced our whole fleet of golf carts. They're all now electrified to reduce our CO2 emissions. And we employed over 165 teens in our Teen Summer Program in 2023. In addition, the Moving Atlanta Forward dollars helped us to hire the Director of Parks and Recreation and Public Safety, who's here with us today, and also hire additional park rangers to increase patron and staff safety in our parks. As we look to 2025, or fiscal year 25, we look to expand our summer food program. We're going to expand our sites from 30 sites in fiscal year 24 to over 45 sites in fiscal year 25, creating a city and an opportunity for all. We're also expanding our youth athletic programs to include more female-oriented sports for flag football, and we'll have a citywide youth soccer program as well as lacrosse. So working to expand the offerings that we offer our young people through our diversity of sports beyond football, basketball, and baseball. This is really exciting. And also youth soccer in preparation of the World Cup in 2026. And we'll be working with Soccer in the Streets to make that happen. We're also going to complete construction on 18 pickleball courts for a total of 24 dedicated pickleball courts and complete the remaining 30 overlays for a total of 63 overlays, both at our racket centers and at centers where people can drop in for free, at our tennis courts where people can drop in for free. We're also going to be expanding the Atlanta Teen Leadership Academy and working to serve over 500 plus teens involved in our programs. We're adding additional school break camps. When families aren't able to go out of town, we want to make sure that we have childcare for those families, so we're adding additional school break camps. We're also improving the Senior Olympic experience by creating more clarity around the Senior Games in preparation for 2025. We'll be adding additional esports labs at Martin Luther King Jr. Recreation Center, as well as Bessie Branham. And we're expanding the Playmobile to provide activities in communities who do not have access to our recreation centers. Now I'll turn it over to Deputy Commissioner Doug Voss to talk about our vacancy rate and our positions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Council, this slide indicates current departmental headcount and overall vacancy percentage as of April 17th of this year. This reflects all three funds that the department utilizes to hire and staff positions, including the General Fund, the Park Improvement Fund, and trust funds. Our total filled head count reflected on the slide is 446, with 45 funded positions and 73 unfunded positions. DPR's overall vacancy rate is about 20%, which is, I believe, about 6% less than we were last year at the same time. Going through each category, the General Fund has an 18% vacancy rate. Park Improvement has a much higher vacancy rate, as you can see, of 57%, but that also includes newly created positions that we just completed in the last personnel paper around Thanksgiving. And the Trust Fund, which generally funds both golf and forestry, has about a 26% vacancy rate as of this slide. We have in general increased our head count, but have decreased our overall vacancy rate, which we're extremely proud of. Although DPR is always in the process of hiring full-time candidates on a year-round basis, it is absolutely critical right now that we are funding and filling our seasonal positions. We hire over 500 seasonal positions, around 350 in Camp Best Friends, 100 in aquatics, about 70 in parks, which means that our staff basically doubles during these 3 months while we're hiring for seasonals. We anticipate being able to fill almost all of our full-time vacancies within the first or second quarter of this fiscal year, and believe we can have a good opportunity to actually use a lot of those seasonal employees to fill those vacancies as well. And with that, I'll hand it back to Commissioner.
Great, and I'll kick it over to our Director of Budget and Finance, Henry Thompson.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, council members. So as Commissioner mentioned earlier, we received a 9% increase overall for our total general fund operating budget. And I'll go on to the next slide within to the details. I'm sorry, oh, they're already, okay. For personnel, all personnel expenses, we had a 12.5% increase overall, which was $3.5 million in total personnel. 8.5% of that, 8.5% increase in salaries regular to appropriately align our budget with current staffing levels. Also, we had a $4 million increase in premium pay to support staff receiving those funds, premium pay funds. Lastly, under personnel, we had a 21% decrease in benefits, which was equated to about $2 million. That's the result of right sizing based on current fiscal year projected spend rates. Other expenses, which includes everything non-personnel, we had a 3.3% increase, which was equated to about $643,000 increase in total other expenses. There was a slight reduction in personnel due to a one-time expense that was amended last year. Then also we had a 10% increase in our supply line. That's specifically due to the utilities, which is electricity, some increased rates. And that overall, we did have like I said, we had a 9% increase total for the budget, but that is the overall budget. Thank you.
Great, well, thank you, Henry. Well, moving on, in closing, thank you for the opportunity to present our budget on behalf of the Department of Parks and Recreation, and we're happy to take any questions.
All right, and who has questions? I know I'm happy to start with a few. So let's talk about your vacancies, and I'll have to go back and consult my found collection of budgets, but it does seem to me, and I'm glad to hear that your vacancy rate is lower than it has been. I would expect that if I went back and looked at over, say, last 15 years, I would expect that the vacancy rate has more or less kind of remained in around a 20% range. To what do you attribute that? I mean, it's pretty stubbornly been there.
Yeah, I think it's a number of different factors that the administration and the department are working on collectively together. I know recently we completed the class and comprehensive compensation study, so we know compensation is one of the items. Also creating just a great work environment. So recently we've been focusing on training. Last year, Deputy Commissioner Voss kicked off a program for certifications. And so within forestry, we have a certification benefit program where if you get a certain certification, then you receive incentive pay. We're going to be rolling that out in parks. And also we have a program similar to that in recreation with our lifeguards, which are an additional position that's hard to fill. So we're looking at creative ways to make DPR a great positive place to work through training, engagement, and support.
And so you are nationally accredited, right, as an organization?
Correct.
So I assume that has to be, you're up for renewal every so often. Where are you in that cycle?
Yeah, Deputy Commissioner Dudley can speak to where we're at in the renewal process.
Currently, we're working on our yearly audit. And so with the CAPRA accreditations, they'll identify 5 to 7 items that we have to look through and determine our mechanisms for how we're implementing them. So right now, one of our performance and operations consultants is currently completing that process. It's due on June 5th. And so we'll be sending that in to just assert that we are going in the right direction. And then, of course, preparing for the accreditation in 2027.
And remind us what the national organization is that manages that process.
The National Recreation and Parks Association.
And roughly what percentage of Parks and Rec outfits manage to attain this?
I believe it's 26%.
26%. Yes. Oh, only one.
Sorry, I know last year when we were at this very table, that same question came up, and it's less than 1% of agencies nationwide are accredited.
Wow.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
And also this year we'll be hosting the 2024 National Recreation and Parks Association Convention at our very own World Congress Center. the second week of October, and over 5,000 parks and recreation professionals will be in the city.
Very good. In terms of safety enhancements, tell us how the park ranger program is developing.
Yeah, so currently we installed over 250 cameras this last year. I think at this table last year we were talking about one park ranger. Now we're up to 2 park rangers. They're both recaptured officers. Basically we have Park Ranger Singh, or Major Singh, and then we have Park Ranger AC Smith. And then we're adding additional positions in more of less of a police-oriented position. There'll be park rangers, and so right now we're working on the job descriptions, and those will be posted shortly.
Okay, and they sort of go where it feels like they're needed. They rotate around.
Correct. Yeah. They'll operate similar to Midtown Blue or to ADID and their patrols. They'll identify different problem situations. They'll either handle it in a non-aggressive stance, or they'll work with the APD if they need backup or support.
And I assume you're not shy about asking your private sector partners to help with those costs.
Yes, I know Piedmont Park, they hire outside officers. Buckhead Baseball, they hire outside officers to help manage their support. Atlanta Elite, I know they work with their security personnel as well to support safety at their program. So many of our different programs offer support. And then this year we'll also have security and metal detectors at each of our outdoor pools as a means of providing additional safety and support.
Well, it's sad that those are needed, but I'm glad they're coming under the circumstances. So you're showing a 42 additional FTEs being asked for. And are those going to be dedicated to any one or two particular areas, or are they going to be spread throughout the organization as needed?
Yeah, mainly they're spread throughout the organization. Several office assistants, HVAC technicians, park supervisor, park workers, recreation operations assistant, data specialists, youth development coordinators. Many of these are extra help positions that were approved through subsequent employment actions, and now they're being adopted as part of this fiscal year budget.
All right, and then 253 cameras installed as part of phase 2. How many were installed in phase 1?
We don't have that number offhand, Deputy Commissioner Voss.
Well, we call that's a very good question, but we call our phase 1 would be that 253. That includes Rosa Birney, Woodruff, Grant, Washington, Piedmont, Johnny White, and Katherine Johnson. Our phase 2 program would be Selena Butler, William Walker, Adams, and South Bend. And then we have a phase 3 that we actually just received purchase orders for. I'll go ahead and say it. Central, Historic 4th Ward, Mosley, Oakland Cemetery, Perkison, and Reverend James Orange. These were based on, if you remember, data we received from APD about the 20 parks that had the most high levels of crime at that time.
Does the installation and maintenance come out of y'all's budget for those?
Correct.
The installation is mainly through the MAF program. We do have off programs where we can supplement with either millage or through general funds, but most of the programs that I've just spoken to, those are coming directly from the MAF program.
So you have a maintenance program, because as we've seen with APD, cameras have a way of not always being online.
Correct.
I'm going to close with an important pickleball question. Yes, they are all important pickleball questions. But I'm curious, so I assume we were not the birthplace of pickleball, and there have been other places around the country where it sort of began. And do you know kind of what the birthplace of pickleball was, by the way?
Bainbridge Island, Washington.
Bainbridge Island, Washington. And that would have been how many years ago, roughly?
Oh man, at least 40 plus.
To 10?
Yeah. No, 40 plus.
40?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's my question. Because, we were going through the worst crime wave we've ever been through. And all my constituents wanted to talk about was, where's my dang pickleball court? Ms. Norwood's laughing, but I'm sure she heard a lot of those same comments. So is pickleball permanent, or do you see signs that in places beyond its origin, it's a trend of some sort, even though over a long period of time?
Yeah, I mean, since it's been around for that long, I think it had a very slow growth. I myself grew up playing pickleball when I was 10 years old in the backyard of a friend in Kent, Washington. They had a pickleball court in their backyard. and the old wooden paddles with the green ball. I can remember the look. And so it grew very slowly. Recently, it's seen an uptick, even more so in the pandemic, given that was one of the few things you could do outside with some friends and neighbors at a tennis court or a pickleball court. So it has seen meteoric rise, and I think it is something that we need to be responsive to, and I think that's why we're taking a pragmatic approach to installing overlays. You know, it's one thing to go out and build dedicated pickleball courts. It's another thing to go out and overlay a court, see where it's at, and then be measured for the future. And so we're really trying to be intentional about it. I myself and our team, we tend to rely more on multi-use experience versus individual experiences to reduce the capital cost and maintenance and operation cost. But we do know that in some cases we should also offer dedicated experiences. So we're working to find that right balance. As I stated in the presentation, I'm trying to find my note here, but we have we completed the construction of 18 pickleball courts, or this next year in fiscal year 25, 18 dedicated pickleball courts for a total of 24 dedicated courts, and we'll complete the remaining 30 overlays for a total of 63 overlays. So if you add those two numbers together, that's over 87 courts in total. Now 63 of those are 2 courts overlaid on a tennis court, or sometimes a single court overlaid on a tennis court. But we are working hard to be good stewards of our resources and take a measured approach.
Right. And there are private pickleball courts, right?
There are private pickleball courts. Recently, a pickleball venue opened up in kind of the ath experience or athleisure type restaurant orientation, where they have both pickleball courts as well as food and restaurant. I think it's designed to look like the U.S. Open. So,
With an alcohol license?
yes, yeah.
Well, all right. So, you know, for what you're foreseeing in terms of eventually building this out, do you think that's going to satisfy Atlanta's appetite?
You know, I think we're going to take the measured approach. So we just completed the pilot, which will be done this July. As we talked about the tennis and the pickleball community, we also have to recognize we have the largest tennis community in the nation. The southern region of USTA has a lot of people that play, and we have Alta tennis as well. So we need to manage both populations, just like we manage baseball and football or basketball and other sports, right? And so being good stewards of the resources, we're taking that measured approach, and we're working with the pickleball community and the tennis community to make sure that we're working together to meet all the needs.
All right. Lastly, you mentioned sort of coming pay and class benefits that you think is going to help reduce your vacancy rate. Do you know what's coming in terms of your employees, or have you just received a high-level view up to this point?
Yeah, we've just received a high-level view of what at this point, and so we're working with Commissioner Smith, working with the mayor's office to identify what those resources will be, and then we'll work to allocate those out based on the highest need and the biggest gap in compensation.
Thank you. That does it for me. Colleagues, Mr. Hillis.
Thank you, Chairman Shook. Thank you, Commissioner Feller, and your team for the presentation. You mentioned, and Chairman Shook asked about the security program. I know one is adding, I think, a park ranger, in-house team, and some non-sworn resources. Also includes, I believe, contracted services. What is the status of that in this new budget? Does it remain the same? Does it increase that budget? Where we go in FY25 with that?
Yeah, Deputy Commissioner Boss.
Thanks, Councilmember Hillis. The program's still very much active. Council assisted us in adding additional fund lines recently, so we can use both the Park Improvement Fund. We also have trust fund accounts and general fund. So, for example, when we're in the pool season, we can use the trust fund account, which generally focuses on recreational needs, but we can also use the millage account for just general patrols or for whatever athletic events or whatever the nature of the event is. So we use it every day. We have officers that we utilize in that program at certain locations, and they have targeted enforcement. We get good reports, and that'll ramp up over the summer. There's no doubt about it as we get into the warmer months.
Staying on the subject of mentioned ramping up over the summer, what in this budget, I know there are seasonal positions, further allow us to better keep up with the increased need for summer maintenance at our parks and along our trails?
That's an excellent question. We actually, there's several items. One thing that we have done is we've actually shifted some of our positions to meet the needs where we need them, meaning that a lot of times we found that we used to hire a lot of CDL positions. We've actually converted a lot of those positions. They're not as needed sometimes as just having boots on the ground, people that can mow, pick up litter, and perform other functions. So we've been able to reduce some of our vacancy rate by readjusting what we feel our most important needs are. So we've done reclasses and such like that, just to make sure that we can get people that are interested in working for parks and they can move up through once they get here. But we found that to be very effective recently. We've filled a number of our positions. Councilmember Shook mentioned our vacancy rate going down, and a large part of that has been because of those park adjustments we've made.
And lastly, one of the much needed and much appreciated resources that's positioned in parks, but is really impacts our whole city, because a lot of people don't know that your forestry team, they're utilized throughout the city and city right of way. Anytime there's an issue with a tree down in city right of way, or one that may need to come down because of it's dead, dying, or hazardous, that's on the parks forestry team. So what in this budget increases their budget with their need? I know they're always working, and I've always said almost every budget would like to see that team expanded. So what in this budget, are they kept the same? Are they increasing? Are we adding any staff members there? And then what is the current status with filled positions and vacant funded positions specific to the forestry team?
Well, first off, this budget does nothing to reduce our forestry operations, and it has been augmented very significantly through what this council, the mayor, the commissioner have done for us with the increase in the millage account. We have contractors that are here as we speak today through a debris cleanup on the street. And why that's so important, although I think I saw the news this morning, we might have heavy wind conditions coming in tomorrow, so I'm glad they're here. But what that really does is it allows our teams to do takedowns while we use the contractors to clean the streets. And that's 7 days a week. It happened just the other day on a Saturday night at 9 o'clock, and we were able to take care of that because we have that flexibility. So this budget really just keeps those positions whole that we can continue to fill. Since last time I was here, I don't want to report on exactly what I said, but we had, I think, hired no additional staff members last year. We've hired 3 in this last year. So not all of them are climbers. Some of them are using the equipment, but at this point, it just doesn't matter. We're happy, as Commissioner mentioned, we have an incentive program to try to teach and train them through the process and develop our own forestry team again. Off the top of my head, I have the notes here, but I think we have about 15 positions filled of about 20. But with the use of the contractors, that's really made all the difference. I will say, again, just general knowledge from the top of my head, but the last 4 months were the first time we have met metric, which is about 85% or better of our intended target in about 2 years. And so appreciate the commissioner, council, mayor for helping us with those funds. That's made a huge difference. It really has.
Yeah, if you could just give me some details on our internal team with the filled versus
I will.
either and vacant positions, whether they're funded or unfunded. Much appreciated. Thank you, Commissioner, and your team, and thank you, Councilmember Shook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Cutler. Sorry, playing a little musical chairs over here. I could get a little closer. Yes. So I know that last year, we had a kind of a large scale kind of acquisition strategy, and I just wanted to see if this budget kind of reflects that again this year. I know District 1 was a big beneficiary from park acquisitions last year, and just wanted to see if there was an overall goal in this budget.
Yeah, so within this budget, within the general fund, we typically don't allocate general fund resources to park acquisitions. Park acquisitions come from 3 main sources: the Tree Trust Fund, Park Millage, and Community Improvement and Enhancement Fund. So those are typically where we see the funds. Park millage obviously is a dedicated millage associated with park improvements, capital acquisitions, property acquisitions. Tree trust funds, those properties have to be over 80% tree canopy or better in order for us to use these funds to acquire. And then CIE funds are dependent upon building permits, and then they're segmented into 3 areas. We have west, north, and south, which are the 3 kind of districts, if you will, where we have to spend the funds.
Okay. And then I guess park maintenance is also a big part of that that equation as well as we look at as growing more parks throughout the city of Atlanta. And so obviously the millage helps with that, but obviously, we don't want all of that to go. I know you've met with us about the different tranches of uses for those funds. Does everything still seem to be in line with your 5-year plan around the usage of the new park millage funds?
Yeah, and really we're at year 2 of kind of the first of the 3-year rollout. Year 1, if you remember, is kind of the sleep phase, right, where we work with contractors, a lot of contracts. We initiate purchase of vehicles. We won't receive the equipment or purchase those vehicles until really this next fiscal year is when you'll start to see those vehicles roll out, new forestry equipment to support safety, new trucks for our electrician and our carpenters to help them be more efficient. So year 2 is when you'll see those investments start to happen. We'll also increase our hiring in year 2. Then our leap year will be year 3. And so we're in that 2-year cycle this fiscal year 25, with the 3rd year coming in fiscal year 26. So, but already, I've heard anecdotally from community members who've expressed they've seen increased litter pickup. We're working with a group called CEO in order to both provide job training opportunities as well as provide a PM litter pickup at how many parks, Doug?
At least a dozen, if not more.
I believe it's 20 parks.
Yeah.
I'm talking with Ms. Tucker. So at 20 parks, our most heavily used parks all throughout the city, we have a PM litter pickup that's coming around picking up litter in addition to our AM crew, just to meet that expectation that our community has.
And then last year, I know we had the new position, Director of Partnerships, which seems to be working out really great. Go, Rachel. But are you looking at any other type of newly created positions? I know there was a lot of talk about a Director of Natural Resources. Are there any other types of positions such as this you'd be looking to bring to the DPR team?
Yeah, really only one new one, the Director of Natural Resources that you spoke of. In this position, will support our forestry team, our arborist team, as well as our natural area maintenance team. And they'll be responsible for just coordinating with other agencies as well. The Department of Watershed, they have a substantial amount of natural areas that they manage. And so working collaboratively with those organizations, working closely with Trees Atlanta to make sure that we're managing our tree canopy, all with an aim to help meet that 50% tree canopy goal. The CEO of Trees Atlanta and I joke about, we need kudzu-free parks too, right? How can we get to kudzu-free? How can we get to privet-free parks? So that will both save the canopy and reduce the impact that kudzu and ivy have on canopy loss. But how do we do that in a systemic way? So this person will be able to help us think strategically about, here are the sites. We need to remove the kudzu to save the trees. And then we need to remove the kudzu and the other invasives in order to preserve and create more productive natural resource areas.
And then just lastly, just wondering if there's any type of program that you all are thinking about. I know Park Pride kind of helps with this, but just developing new conservancies throughout the city of Atlanta. I know we rely on a lot of them to help us with some of the maintenance and improvements of our parks. And it just seems like, I know particularly in my district, there are some groups that are interested but just don't have the wherewithal or the information to be able to get started. And some of that takes funding and having a 501(c)(3) status to be able to do that. So just wondering if there's any type of resources that you all are considering for these types of groups.
Yeah, so first and foremost, that's the main reason we hired Deputy Commissioner Marr into her position is we heard consistently from existing conservancies and friends groups, hey, how can we be better connected to the department? So she's increased our capacity because we didn't have anybody in that role previously. It would oftentimes be they would try one person or try another. Now we have a dedicated person. We hold quarterly conservancy and friends group meetings. So there's a method to collect information, collect feedback, connect them with our district maintenance managers, recreation services to make sure that we're coordinated, receive partnership requests that we get from the outside to help plug them into our system, help to navigate how that works. So we've seen a tremendous improvement in our ability to both receive partnerships, execute on partnerships, and then also support friends and conservancies. In addition to that, through the millage, we've allocated $750,000 as a match with Park Pride, so they can leverage that fund to go out and raise an additional $750,000. So now we'll have $1.5 million that will be allocated to underserved neighborhoods where they may not have a conservancy or friends group, or they're looking to start one, and this can be the seed money to help them with their first project, to help build capacity, to build momentum. And then I also know that Park Pride, they have their Park Steward program. So they're working within community development leaders to talk about the process, to identify a project, and they're allocating a small grant to help build capacity within certain parks. One park in my mind that comes to mind is a Harper Park, for instance, where there hadn't been a Friends Group or Conservancy, and Celeste participated in the program. They received a small grant, and they're working collaboratively with the department. So we're talking about improving the playground. They're looking at developing a trail in that area. So now there's that connection. Now there's that capacity, and we're building that together.
And then I'll just say that I'm glad the funding is still there for the off-duty police officer program throughout the parks in collaboration with Major Singing and the Park Ranger program. That has worked tremendously in District 1. And so I think that's something that, I hope that we continue to grow as it seems to be working. I know we've added a lot of new cameras, but just happy to see that program continue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon, y'all. Thank you so much for the presentation. Had just a couple of questions. My colleagues did a really good job of nailing kind of all of them. Well, before I get into it, I want to just thank you all because District 5, since we increased budget last year and since we had the partnership with Park Pride, every single district is receiving a lot of love, but every park in District 5 is undergoing a really big makeover, thanks to you all. And through partnerships with Park Pride, it's also the communities having a say in how those dollars are directed in their parks. And so it's been so successful. So I just want to really thank you all. And I also want to thank y'all for taking all the emails from my district as a result. And just really quickly, I wanted to ask, so let me see, we increase of budget approximately what, $4 million this year in comparison to last year?
About 9%.
About 9%, okay. And with the additional acreage and everything else, this is still allowing you to maintain the operations and the standard that we have now set and everything. Great. I was curious about the backlog in how big our backlog may be in stump removal and in tree trimming and tree removal, because I know we're dealing with a couple of requests right now.
Thank you, Councilmember Bakhtiari. Forestry is, I can get you the numbers, but I think the last 4 months have been the best they've had in about 2 years. They are not, I think there's maybe 2 items that are overdue at this point. So they are well ahead of their backlog at this point. With forestry, that only lasts about as long as one good storm, and then you can never, be too sure. But right now they're doing very well. So we always encourage people, this would be a great time if you feel like it takes too long to get your tree inspected, which I don't think it does, but if you want to put it in now, we're doing very well. With stumps, that has been a point of contention for a long time. We usually try to get all stumps off the list within 1 year, which is way too long. We use a contractor. My understanding is they're down to their last 20% of their contract, which means we will probably put that back out. We have the ability to grind stumps on our own, and that is an opportunity for us to do that. To be honest with you, our number one goal was to make sure we could get the tree takedowns and the pruning done first. Now that we've accomplished that, Chris Calio, who runs that division for us, we have the equipment. We just have to hire those staff to do so. I think we'd be a lot more efficient doing it ourselves. And we could also respond better to the community if we get those calls about this pesky skunk. So, but I feel like we're in a good place. Yeah.
Okay. So are you feeling that after, like you said, it's best in 2 years, you think that after this summer, we might be fully caught up on?
We're caught up now.
We're caught up now.
We're caught up now. Now we have plenty of work to do, but we have a metric. So we try to take down, if we come to your house and we say that tree is coming down, we have a 45-day metric. We are well within that metric at this point and have been for several months.
Well, that's fantastic. Councilmember Schick, you want to check your heart rate? You good?
And just to be clear, it's
I know, that's
45.
like astounding news for you. It's not a fever dream. You okay? Okay.
I just want to clarify for everybody, that's 45 business days. I think that's really important to just call out, because I think oftentimes people hear SLAs and calendar days, and it's 45 business days. That's correct.
It's important to note that, and I do appreciate it. And I also, because this came up a lot right when you first took office, took your departmental position, and the stormwater piece. Watershed was great with working with us on different park issues where we had massive sinkholes, broken storm drains, et cetera. But I know that there has been a consistent conversation about when it comes to watershed issue, if it's in a park, it's not watershed, it's going to be DPRs. But some of these issues I know require a different level of engineering. Is there, moving forward, have we talked about how to solve this issue? Or, I mean, are we looking at maybe like a stormwater line item in DPR's budget for hiring for that? Or are we looking at combining things with watershed? Has there been any progress made there? Because I also know that sometimes those watershed issues are so expensive that it would drain our entire budget for a park, or even more so than that. So I wanted to ask how we're trying to mitigate that.
Yeah, no, I know we had a work session, I believe, last year in which we talked about stormwater and what Department of Parks and Recreation and Department of Watershed Management are doing collaboratively. I know Department of Public Works as well as ATL DOT were involved. Really, I think our track record when it comes to looking at Old Fourth Ward Park, Cook Park, working on Custer Avenue Park, we work really closely together to design parks that both serve the recreational and park amenity needs as well as the stormwater needs. And so it's our intention to continue that relationship with the new interim commissioner and just Commissioner Wiggins, and making sure that we are building parks that both meet the needs, both from a stormwater standpoint and a parks and recreational standpoint. As far as the specific maintenance required, I know sometimes there's additional maintenance that's required when you do a stormwater facility, and the Department of Watershed is responsible for that maintenance. So for instance, at Cook Park, we maintain everything west of the Martin Luther King Jr. statue, and Department of Watershed maintains everything east of that statue, more or less, in that detention basin area. And so we work collaboratively with our contractors to specify who maintains what and work to be clear as to who does what. So.
Understood. I'm imagining, though, long-term, as we continue growing and as more turbulent weather patterns continue to become more common, I'm guessing long-term, though, I'm supposing there's probably going to have to be a discussion about either a stormwater line item within your budget with experienced engineers, because I know watershed is fantastic, but predicting the patterns that we've seen with rainfall and how parks have been created to be a catch basin, just long term, I'm obviously happy that partnership has become really strong, but long term, for preparation with funding, or will there be asks in the future for us to consider adding that line item to your budget?
Yeah, we'll coordinate with the administration on any asks and bring forward to council as myself and Commissioner Wiggins see fit, just to coordinate on that. So, thank you.
Understood. And I was happy to hear, I'm glad that Councilmember Winston brought up the park ranger program. From my understanding, we have 2 officers there now and hoping to grow that. And obviously we all love Officer Singh. And where do we think, when do y'all hope to bring in programming from an educational perspective and envision perhaps using the park rangers for more than just enforcement? Where would we need to get on numbers-wise with hiring in order to make that achievable?
Yeah, I think when we think about education, are you talking more in the environmental education sense, or are you thinking more in the education on park rules and park permit process?
Oh, I would love both.
Okay. So I think the park rangers will really be focused on the park permit, kind of park compliance, rule compliance. As far as environmental education, currently we work with Blue Heron Nature Center and we work with West Side Watershed Alliance, or WAWA. Those are 2 entities that we work through a partnership with called Thrive Outside. Mm-hmm. And so Trust for Public Land, WAWA, and many others are a part of that partnership. Trish, our our after school program liaison, she recently went to a training with Rachel Marr, on our Deputy Commissioner of Partnerships and Enterprise, to talk about how we can be doing more in the environmental education space. And so we're working to develop that muscle more consistently, and that will be within our recreation team.
Wonderful to hear. And on the piece that you said about the canopy piece, when y'all were speaking earlier about needing to be 50%, I've had a question for a long time. Is there not a way to reduce that number? Because my hope would be that part of our goal would be to also plant back areas that are missing canopy, where we can actually still purchase land and build out canopy on property. Is there any idea has there been any discussion on reducing 50% to, I don't know, 30 or 5 or something lower than that?
I don't understand your question. Are you saying that you want to reduce the tree canopy to 30%? I mean, you want to cut down more trees, or do you want to go to 80%?
Are you trying to get me killed on my district? And absolutely not. No, I mean, when it comes to looking at the qualifications for purchase.
Okay, so you're talking more on the tree protection ordinance,
Yes,
going from
we talked about
80%. Okay.
in order to use that fund,
Right.
lowering what is required, because my hope would be that we'd actually be trying to target parcels that we own that have limited canopy to do stronger plantings. Does that make sense?
It does. So we are
For the
coordinating.
record, I do not believe in cutting down more trees. Okay.
So, yeah, we are working with the Department of Community Planning to assess the tree protection ordinance and working with their committee to provide feedback.
Commissioner, you just, my nervous system is all up here in my neck.
Apologies.
No, you're good.
Thank you for clarifying.
No, thank you. And my last question for you is the specific funding allocated to support the expansion of programming for different interests. So senior athletics, like my seniors really want to take pickleball classes, cooking classes, team programs, et cetera. What funding is going to be allocated to that are the items that are highlighted in the action? Items?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Councilmember Bakhtiari. So last year, the park millage included $1 million in additional resources for recreation. So there's both those resources as well as earned income opportunities where we can provide fee-for-service recreation services. But we have increased the number of senior programming, and we're working with the Atlanta Fulton County Recreation Authority in order to build our first dedicated senior facility, and that will be at John A. White Golf Course. So we want to support our seniors and provide them with the necessary means of being able to age in place and have a happy, healthy life in their golden years. So yeah, we are working collaboratively with the neighborhoods, working with our community center staff to identify what more we can do for our seniors.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all so much. That concludes my questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for what you all are doing in the city of Atlanta. You all work directly with people, so you all have a pivotal role in the government. The senior programming is really going well over in District 10 at the C.T. Martin Rec Center in Old Adamsville. We're kind of busting at the seams. We have so many people trying to see how can we get Roselle Fan, M.L. King, Langford Collier, Ben Hill, and Adams Park up and going as that center is going. It's wonderful at Old Adamsville. We have all types of vendors that come in. We have music classes. At the C.T. Martin Rec Center, you have a huge program on Fridays, and I'm not finding that anywhere else in the city of Atlanta. I would love to see that in other districts as well.
I think you're absolutely right. And actually, I think it was you, Councilmember Boone, and Councilmember Lewis who asked for that charge last year. Thanks to the millage, we've expanded our senior programs to 15 sites. It is true, they are not all as robust as some in your...
I see 20 people.
What's it?
I move around a lot.
I know, there you go.
I move around, so
but
when I go to Mosley, I see 12 or 13
Yeah.
people. When I go to Langford, I see about 9 people. I think Ben Hill might be up to 23. So I think they're coming all to District 10. I want to offer that throughout the city.
We agree. And the program, one of the issues we are limited by right now, there are about 3 to 4 senior program vendors. We use them all, and we use them to the max limit that we can. We would love to have more senior vendors, but to be honest, there's also a lot of in-house talent that we have within our rec team. We have a brand new community facility manager that manages Reverend James Orange and C.A. Scott. She has a lot of senior programming background, and the more we can offer in-house, the better. We have over 1,800 seniors registered right now in our Primetime Senior Program. That is a record. The truth of the matter is, though, they don't come every day. To your
But a lot of them are in District 10.
I believe it.
I see a lot
I
of
believe
District
it.
12, 1, 2, which is great.
It is great.
But I do want to your staff out here, thank you all for what you all do. I mean, we've got to get in these other communities.
We do.
And grow these senior we've got to do it because it's so needed. The field trips that you
Yep.
all sponsor are just wonderful. But I want every district to have that same valuable field trips that you all do.
Agreed.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
take
you all
that.
so
Yeah,
much.
agreed.
I really want that to happen. Do I need to come out of retirement? Help.
I didn't know you were in retirement.
Okay, let me, I have a couple of other issues. Trish, that used to be at the C.T. Martin Center, I would like to see that position replaced. She did a lot of things as far as history programs, arts and crafts. but she did not have a budget. So I would like to see that come back to the C.T. Martin Recreation Center and that position filled. Someone that goes out and really brings programming back into the rec centers. I would love to see that. You all know Trish?
Trish, actually, to use your point, we brought her downtown, and she actually provides all those services.
Not happening at C.T. Martin.
It's happening. It's happening.
Guess
It's going to
what?
happen. It's happening.
It's not happening.
It's going to happen.
I want it to happen again.
She promoted. She's in charge of all those third-party programs for both after school and Camp Best Friends. But to your point,
I need it back.
You need it back at C.T. Martin.
It was valuable.
understood.
Cooking classes, sewing classes, folks that come through the door that want to do building with our young men, teaching them about building, plumbing, Toastmasters. We have a wonderful dance studio that I would love to see back up and alive. We did a great job with that for many years. Let's get that back going in not just C.T. Martin, but in the other recreation centers. Collier Park, during the day, let's put something in Collier Park. During the day, I know we have a wonderful after-school program, but let's put something in Collier Park during the day. That will be great. And to my main point, investing in our workforce and investing in our directors and our people, making sure that they are strong and we are preparing them to go on to the next step in life. What is your plan as far as the average of rotating some of these people out so that they can be promoted and they're not just brain dead in a center thinking that it's their own? What are your plans for training so that they can make proper decisions when something comes through the door? We want them to have good judgment. We want them to expand mentally. So let's look at, some type of progression. I know we used to do that. I've seen your staff in the audience, some of them grow up to do well. And we'd like to not see people just sit somewhere in one spot. That to me is not healthy. Also, you have ROAs. They're not even making $20 an hour. South Fulton County pays their recreation assistants a minimum of $20 an hour. I don't want us to be a top-heavy city and not take care of the people that are literally on the ground. You can't really survive with less than $20 an hour. And some of our workers in recreation are not doing that. And they are depending on the food pantries and the utility assistance. I would love to see every employee make a minimum of $20 an hour. What about the moving people around? How does that go, Doug?
Yeah, so first I want to talk about workforce development investment. So this last year, one of the things we've done is we're working with a group called LeaderGov, and they're doing a leadership training program with all frontline supervisors all the way through the commissioner's office. So we're working holistically to provide more training around accountability, leadership, management, goal setting, community engagement. How are you working with your team? How are you inspiring your team? How are you basic leadership skills to lead your team? That's brand new, yeah.
We need that. We need that because we really want people to have adequate comprehension and understand when something good is coming in the building and not turn everything down. We've got to do that. And it may be happening in other places. And you all know the situation that we are facing in my community. We've got to help people. It's about helping people. Nothing malice, but for a person to have, each director, to have adequate comprehension so that they can go on and be like the folks, wonderful people in the audience here. Get more education. Take training classes. Send them on trips so that they can see how other cities operate. I was privileged to go to Chicago and see how their after-school program worked. But for us to allow people to sit in one space is not fair to them at all. So I would love to see that. And I know my colleagues would love to see the people part of recreation grow as well. But my last, I don't want to prolong everything because we can meet. The community is really excited about the C.T. Martin Museum that we're going to be working on soon. They loved him so much. And our funds in place for that already. We're ready for the design and everything for that.
Yeah, so Keith Hicks, Interim Deputy Commissioner, can speak to that, kind of where we're at and where we're going.
So we've already did the site visit with you, and so we are in the process of getting a consultant to help us with that design.
Okay.
I think we're talking about doing something out in the lobby against the
They want it
hand railing there.
visible. Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't want.
And so once that consultant is on board, we'll get some more information and we can get back to you, Councilmember.
Okay. And I must commend the tree trimming people, the folks that cut the grass, plant the flowers, Quentin. I know his phone rings constantly, but they do a tremendous job. I wish they were here. They do a tremendous job. But again, thank you. And some of my issues we can meet offline, but I want you all to please invest in your people. Invest in them. We don't want people to just sit in one place and never progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to hear from Ms. Spectieri, and then the council president's going to bring us home.
Okay, here we are. Sorry, I had one quick question. I wanted to ask about about transportation. I know that I think Councilman Boone just touched on it, but do we have any kind of line item for? I think about the senior piece because a lot of the towers did not bring back transportation after the pandemic, so it continues to be one of our biggest issues. And I don't believe that is a responsibility that should fall solely on the city, but given all of the parks programming and the number of seniors that reach out asking to get to the parks for Tai Chi or whatever other classes that are being shown or taught, is there anything that we are doing in terms of prepping for that gap?
No, that's an excellent, it's very on point. And we've actually had this conversation now on two levels, one with seniors, also with our after-school program. Right now, to be honest with you, some of the vacancies we're missing are still in that transportation category. We actually have vehicles, thanks to this council, in previous years. One thing we're looking at doing right now, where possible, we do this in District 10 already, but we're actually looking at leaving the vehicles at the sites. Right now, we use a formula where a person has to pick up a vehicle from a fleet, then they take it back to their site, pick up, they have to be back at a certain time. There's just it's a complicated route. And one of the things we're looking at is trying to, where possible, move those vehicles to the sites where the staff members could then go directly from that site, whether it be a senior or an after-school program, and get right back to the site. We don't have to make Councilmember Boone and I have talked about this a long time, you don't have to be back by 2 to then pick up the next group of participants. So that's something I'm super excited about. I don't think we'll be fully fledged, but I think that program will start to roll out with the August school year.
And that's.
Kind of the coordinated bus program.
You want to go
Transportation, yeah.
Did you get what you needed from that? Did you want to ask a follow-up question on that before I went on? You good? Okay. I'm really happy to hear that. I know she is too. So very, very excited about that and would love to talk with you more about that offline. Keith, I apologize in advance, and Doug, for all the calls you're about to get. And I also, the enforcement piece that y'all brought up, also wanted to flag, as I'm sure you know, dogs off leash has become an increasing safety issue. The number of my inbox is blowing up with people that there's almost been attack situations. And so I know that y'all are all over that, but wanted to flag that again as something I'm hoping that we're coming up with strategies around with Major Singh. Did you want to say something to that, Commissioner?
I was just going to say, please encourage people to call 311 or 911 if anybody's being attacked by a dog, and we'll work with Fulton County Animal Control and APD and our park rangers.
One thing I will mention about that, and about the security program, I don't know if Major Singh is here now. He's standing in the back. Major Singh, if you would stand up, and Director Jones, who's our safety director. One of the things we've heard, first of all, I can't say enough about Chief Sherbaum and his support of the program. It's a recapture program. But what I've heard repeatedly is by having Major Singh and AC Smith, our two officers, we are pulling so many calls off of the 911 that are quality of life type issues, dogs off leash being one of the highest ones.
Yep.
I just call Major Singh when I hear that. And so we need to know that. You can either call Parks Customer Service or 311. It's always great to call 911, but the big difference is where if you call the zone, they might be dealing with all sorts of things that are going on, and we can directly assist that. And I think that's true, Major Singh, that Chief Sherbaum has said that's been one of the major things that he's noticed with the program.
Fantastic. Hey, Major Singh. And Major Singh and I are also going to follow up offline to talk through some more of that. The piece that you mentioned around the overgrowth, I wanted to flag this. I forgot to bring it up with Watershed. I did some research and found out there are some FEMA grants that the city has actually never applied for that we can do in terms of offsetting a lot of the watershed issues, flooding, overgrowth, things of that nature, especially with the storms that we're predicting for the summer as well as the overgrowth. The mosquito issues, I'm certain, are going to become like another health issue to watch. So, but I did do some research and I did find out that there are grants that we have not applied for yet that we should go ahead and do and utilize for some of the work that we're doing. And my final thing is, because I know we didn't get to say goodbye to Alvin, I wanted to note here that I know that Alvin Dotson has retired, and I know he's left things in great hands, but another member of the DPR team that we will miss. And we didn't get to say goodbye because in Alvin's true form, he was just like, peace. So I just wanted to make that announcement here and say thank you to him and to y'all for all that you do. And we will miss him, but I'm certain he has left things in good hands.
He's probably watching and laughing right now.
Yes, he probably is.
From a beach.
Oh, he's absolutely at a beach. Hey, Alvin. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for the, sorry, go ahead, Councilmember. But
Oh, okay. Do we need to order 2 more buses for our seniors? Are we in need of that? Because at one time, and I know Ms. Wimbush and Mr. Brown can give us a little historical perspective, we had buses specifically for our seniors. We were not rushing the seniors back to their places for after school. They were there until like 2:15, and now it seems like they're being rushed back.
That's right.
I know Councilman Martin had purchased some buses, and eventually, of course, they got into the rotation of back to school.
That's right.
So we definitely need to have 2 buses allocated for our seniors. We cannot shortcome them. We want to make sure that they have everything that they need. Nice, clean buses. He purchased 2. And eventually they got into the rotation of the after-school program. So I would like to see those in your budget as well. And I know my colleagues would as well. And I know we do need, each center needs a budget for supplies. Crayon, paper, things like that. They should not have to scramble and beg just to get $75 or $100, which means planning their programming out as far as whatever programs they have. Let's make sure that each center is able to purchase markers, paper, whatever they need for that carnival. They should be able to put in for that 30 days in advance and make sure that they're actually doing this. Because it's critical that these rec centers operate at optimum level. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Boone. In response, we do have a couple vehicles in our millage fund to purchase this fiscal year as part of our kind of year 2. So we will be making additional purchases of vehicles to help support transportation. Specifically, whether they're dedicated to senior program or not, we'll double check on that and get back to you. We have a handy dandy chat going on
How many?
for the
I want to
viewers
make,
at home.
I
Let's
want to
see
make
here.
sure that what was put in place, I was downstairs at the time, but I want to make sure.
Yes, we have 2 15-passenger vans that are within our millage purchasing program and 1 new summer food service bus as well.
Okay, the seniors, as far as the 15-passenger goes, they need a shuttle because they
Agreed.
need to be able to walk up the steps. And
they need to lift, too.
And this was put in place. And I know it takes a while for them to come back, So let's correct that. Let's correct that. Let's not just do the vans. We need to have 2 shuttles, additional shuttles for those seniors. And I'll talk to our team and the mayor's team about that. But they were purchased under Councilman Martin and eventually got into the rotation of the after-school programs. So if you all will follow up with me on that, I want to make sure that that is done. Thank you.
Yeah, will do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate all the work you've done. I think we're making great progress. I have a few questions in a few different areas, and then I'll end with a budget question. Mentioned the ongoing goal of a 10-minute park within a 10-minute walk. According to TPL in 2023, we're at 78%. Do you expect that number is going to go up? First part of the question, just given what we've already done so far. And then 2, do you feel like that we have the right sources of funds flowing over the next handful of years to actually get to something approaching 100%? Or do you anticipate that we're actually going to have to find some new revenue sources in order to actually get to that goal?
Yeah, so first, we anticipate that number going up in the sense that adding West Cascade Park, the first park in NPUQ, that should help increase that. And I know that they're doing some sidewalk improvements along Danforth, so that should help. In addition to that, we are working on a joint use agreement with APS that's still working through the legal review process, but that will also increase access because it'll create playgrounds that serve both in the evening and on weekends, and help improve access for our families and children and seniors. So those are 2 actions that we're doing to change how we serve community. Those don't cost any money, right? We paid for West Cascade, and then the joint use agreement will help support that. Related to acquisition, you know, we have 3 pots of money. We have the CIE, we have the tree trust fund, and we have the impact fees. I think if we look from going from where we're currently at about 4,600 acres to our goal of about 6,000 to 7,000 acres, which is our ultimate goal that we'd like to achieve, both philanthropy, I think looking at like this last year, we used the Moving Atlanta Forward process, and that had over $10 million in acquisition. So I think when we look at like T-SPLOST opportunities or Moving Atlanta Forward opportunities, that makes sense from an acquisition standpoint to obtain a large tranche of funds to really move the needle. So, but leveraging philanthropy, CIE, millage, as well as tree trust fund, having that 4th prong would really help.
Got it. And if you just think about sort of the 3 different kinds, my definition of 3 different kinds of park spaces that we have very active park spaces. They have tennis courts or some sort of athletic fields. We have sort of passive but manicured park spaces, right? And then we have sort of forestry or sort of unmanicured, right? Do you think that going forward it's all 3? Do you think that one of those categories that's really more important than the other 2 as we try to get all the way to that goal?
I think when you look at Activate ATL, we identify that really all of them are important from the standpoint that in order to preserve 50% or get to 50% tree canopy, we need the natural areas, but we also need neighborhood and community parks to help support that. From an activity standpoint and people being able to raise a child or go for a walk, we hear consistently that Isabel Webster Gates, people like the walking track there. So how can we add that amenity at more parks? Walking is the #1 form of recreation. People love to walk. And so making sure that that happens is important. And then from a neighborhood opportunity, just purely having access to that green space. If you live in a more dense neighborhood, you need access to a small playground, and that can be on a 1-2 acre lot. And so we need all of those options and we need all of those opportunities because it's the diversity of our park system that really is the benefit to the community. So I think we need all those options in order to get to that 7,000 target, as well as to get to 100% of that walk shed.
Good. Different topic. We had a series of wonderful announcements about federal funding and other funding around trees. There are several major projects that are going on, from Downtown Tree Canopy Project, the Flowering Forest Project, and others. Could you just talk a little bit about, are there increases in maintenance funds in these budgets for those trees coming online, or is that Trees Atlanta right now related to the grants? Could you just talk a little bit about the maintenance long-term of those and how we are we doing that now? Does that end up in parks later on, and how do we think about budgeting for that?
Yeah, Doug, do you want to talk about kind of Beltline.
Well, I think the biggest, and I think Councilmember Shipman, you and I were both at the announcement last year when we received the $5 million grant. We were happy to find last week we actually got the contract, which is now with law to review, but we think that's actually imminent. We think that that fund is going to start this calendar year. That grant allows for three main things. One, it allows us to inventory all of our right-of-way trees, which we know we have thousands of linear miles of trees that we maintain, and provides for maintenance as well as just an flat-out inventory. The second thing is it allows for the master plan, the forest urban master plan, which we've never had. And then the third item is the invasive control. That particular grant is focused on about 140 acres in southeast Atlanta called the Swan Preserve and South Bend Park. But that is actually also supposed to be a pilot kickoff point for us to use that model across the city. So I think in there's quite a bit, but I think that answers, that's going to focus on what you're getting at, is trying to make sure that not only do we know what we have, but there's a plan to actually maintain them. Our forestry crews won't be able to do that alone, so it's going to be a mix of both them and that type of grant funding, I think.
And just remind us, if all goes according to plan, given that the money would start flowing, when would that master plan be drafted roughly?
Our arborist senior, Taryn Heidel, is just ready to go. She's already got the pieces ready. We need to get the grant funded, but we'll obviously probably use a mix of consultants, using community input and everything as well. But she's ready to go, I think, as soon as next calendar year, if not sooner.
Great. Just two sort of quick topics, or three sort of quick topics. Westside Park mountain bike path. Design was when it first was announced last year, design was going to be wrapped up this year, roughly. Are we still on track for design this year? And if so, how should we think about expectations for construction?
Yeah,
and are there any dollars in here, or is that all privately funded?
Ironically, we got an email this week.
We just got off a call 30 minutes ago.
I didn't even know that, so there you go.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we've got several meetings coming up in the future here. It looked to me like the design right now is around 75%. And so I would say by the end of the year, for sure, it's going to be complete.
Great. And then construction, roughly a couple of years? Just again, do we have a sense yet?
Yeah, I think it would be sooner than that, but we'd have to get back with you on that.
Great. Tennis contract. That was implemented. It's starting to roll out. Just early indications of how that's going, and also revenue expectations. I do see the revenue flat, FY24, FY25. Just comment a little bit on that, if you would.
Yeah, no, generally it's going well. They're meeting their quarterly targets as far as paying the bill. But Henry, anything to add beyond that?
No. So right now there's a rent of about $25,000 per month. And then there is a gross percentage of all receipts, revenues. So, of course, they started in kind of the low season, but we expect it to ramp up over time. So we'll know be able to see projections probably around August or so.
Okay, great. And then just one other small question and then one budget question. We've started to see been very pleased to see additional arts installation in parks. Some major arts installations coming out of the transportation bond from a few years ago, some smaller initiatives by Office of Cultural Affairs, which have been great. Maintenance of those, does that lie with Cultural Affairs? Does it lie with parks? Could you just talk a little bit about that? Because there's nothing worse than a great art project that doesn't look great after a while.
Yeah, maintenance of arts is on the Office of Arts and Culture.
Okay, so it's on that side of the equation.
Correct.
Okay, great, perfect. Last question on the budget. If the Finance Department gave us an update on FY24 a couple of weeks ago, Parks Department was estimated to be at basically $54.5 million by the end of the year in spend. That was the expectation. That was a little bit above budget. Their expectation was that salaries were running ahead, utilities and electricity, which you've talked about it as well. In this budget, we're running ahead. We're running over. My question is, $54.5 million end of 24 projection. You've got a budget of just under $52 million. Help me balance those two numbers, right? It feels like you're doing more, which we want you to do more, and you've heard the questions up here. There's a lot of support on council for what you're doing. But just help me understand, it looks like you're spending at one level and then actually spending less in FY.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'll ask Dr. Wilson to fill in and Mr. Gabriel to fill in the gaps. But
Sure.
Fundamentally, during the summer, kind of this time right now, we're hiring a lot of part-time staff. We're hiring a lot of extra help to fill in for our Camp Best Friends position. So a lot of that overage is within the Camp Best Friends budget line because we need to deliver camp. And so a lot of those are extra help positions that are provided there. But
So is some of that then funding coming out of like the youth programs that the administration has asked for? Maybe finance can help me on this one.
Yeah, so Tina Wilson, CFO. Just to add on to what Commissioner Cutler says, we have made some adjustments in the salaries to address Camp Best Friends. So there are a couple of other things that address sort of that variance between the 2 years that you're asking. One is the retention bonus was included in this year's FY24, which will not be carried forward in FY25. The other is the difference in premium pay. That was
The which one?
premium pay. So the
Okay.
difference between FY24 and 25.
Gotcha. Okay. So just as an overview, you don't feel like that you're actually decreasing from an expense perspective. You feel like that you're sort of resourced at the same or slightly higher level than you were last year.
correct, yeah.
That's what it feels like from a budget perspective. Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it.
And then I have a follow-up related to your tennis question. So last year compared to this year, we had over 111% increase between March 2023 revenues and March 2024 revenues, with March 2023 revenues being 117,000 and March 2024 revenues being 247,000. So
So early indications are good, but you're making a conservative estimate for the budget.
those are actuals in March.
No, I
but
know,
yeah.
but just
Exactly, yeah.
got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I want to acknowledge the presence of your not-so-private, public-private supporters who are here and sending their good vibes in the audience. Sadly, that brings today's briefing to an end. However, we will be back here in this airless, windowless room at 9:30 a.m., and we'll spend the day hearing from, in order, Public Works, Invest Atlanta, HR, Procurement, and Labor. See you then. Thank you.
Thank you.